So let's talk about fees. We see fees in the UK median fees averaging almost 530,000 Rand. So if you look at South African fees, we're actually underpaid.
Correct. I think that's a global trend. I think if you look at South African isolation relative to our counterparts globally, they're still regarded as significantly underpaid.
Regarded as significantly underpaid, but it varies across sectors. If you look at large cap companies, I mean, the non-executive directors, they're pretty much in line with what we're seeing non-executive directors being paid in the UK.
Correct, and I think it's a good point you raised. Between if large caps, which is our top 40 on the JSE, and medium cap, which is the next 60, if you look at those fees, again, there's quite a big differential between large cap and medium cap. That is a concerning factor, almost double in most cases. So in a very small population, we've got probably globally competitive fees, but the majority of non-execs, if we go outside the large cap, then it's still significantly under.
Across sectors, though, it also varies. And what does this tell us about how the various sectors are performing in South Africa?
Very much so. I mean, I think if we look at one important question is looking at, it's not, non-executives don't do this for the fees. In fact, fees rank well below in terms of their factors when they accept appointments. Most of that is around the financial strength of the company and the quality of the executives. If you take that into account, it often is directed by either the sector or the particular company.
Looking at the number of directors, though, non-executive directors sitting on boards, has gone up by 13% in 2011. You're sitting with 2,267 non-executive directors in South Africa now. Just tell us about the trends with regards to the number of directors and the calls to increase this.
Yeah, look, it's a very positive trend because last year we saw a decrease for the first time in 5 or 6 years. At least this year we can say that trend has been reversed. But when you break down the underlying issues around why has this increased, then we saw two distinct factors. One is the role of non-execs. Particularly we've seen far more increases in chairpersons and the new, sort of not new, but more increases in lead independent directors. So it's a new role that's been formed. And secondly, the foreign nationals, the non-resident non-execs that have come to the fore. Particularly for the first time we've seen Chinese nationals and a big increase in the number of foreign nationals from our African states.
Interesting, as you say, pointing out that foreign nationals, the increase there with regards to non-executives, and that would probably, that really counters what we're seeing with regards to fees in terms of competitiveness of South African fees versus non-executive fees overseas.
Yeah, it was a very good point because in fact we actually expected that this would not increase by as it did this year. We're from 125 to over 205 to 205 and we expected that increase not to take place at this stage. If you ask them and say why are they doing it, certainly not for the fees, even though their premium to the local market is about 150%.
Yeah.
But they're not doing it for the fees.
So why are they coming to South Africa?
Well, I think the only way we can to logically explain this is that also I think as South African companies are expanding into Africa, and particularly we all know about the Chinese investment in Africa, we've seen those two in particular coming to the fore. Bear in mind also on the other side of the coin, we've always had big representation from Australia, the UK and the US.
Let's talk about diversity on boards and the type of trends we're seeing with regards to gender and non-whites sitting on boards. Are we seeing a positive trend with regards to those two factors? In South Africa,
yes. Globally, it was high on the agenda last year, but of course it was overshadowed by the level of executives' pay last year, which was by far the biggest topic. So, and the UK, for example, had regulation kind of imposed, which was not well received because regulation we did not want to see. Certainly we don't want to see quotas. In the UK, they're expecting at least 25% of the board to be female representative.
But what does King 3 stipulate?
King 3 doesn't stipulate any specific amount. Just
with
says there should
regards to non-executives.
Yeah, King 3 just says it wants diversity.
Yeah.
And what we've seen in South Africa from last year to this year is almost a significant increase from 4% to over 9%. Now that's in line with the global market. Global market representation of female is around between 9 and 15%, and we're spot on that.
The big focus, though, is on corporate governance, and that's really the role that a non-executive director plays in terms of overseeing operations and not being financially aligned with them per se. What type of changes are we seeing with regards to the role that non-executive directors play on a board?
Look, they play a significant. It is one of the key areas that they feel they can make a difference. It ranks highly in terms of one of the reasons why they do accept these appointments. They do feel they can make a difference. They are there there representing the shareholders. The trend again is that fortunately in South Africa, apart from the Companies Act and the Consumer Protection Act we saw this last year, regulatory environment will still continue, but hopefully not at the same pace we saw in the last period.
What about the issue around too many positions on too many boards? Or not too many positions, but many positions. Yeah. Is that something that's being scrutinized now?
It's been scrutinized, but I think we've seen an increase again in South African environment. We've got over 50 odd executives, non-executives sitting on more than 4 or more boards.
And what does King 3 stipulate?
King 3 doesn't stipulate a number, but again we go globally, we say the number's about acceptable? 3.
Yeah.
Because the biggest factor here is time commitment. One's got to look at your time commitment in sitting on a board.
Exactly.
And once you go beyond 3, one does start questioning your ability to spend that time properly on that board.
Are we likely to see those board members having to reduce?
No, in fact, we've seen the increase. So,
yeah. But is that, as I say, under scrutiny right now?
Not under scrutiny, no. I think it hasn't been specifically. I think most boards would always do the board evaluation and equally the individual performance. So that should come out in their board evaluation.
Overall, though, a positive tone, though, of this report.
Absolutely.
From your side.
Absolutely. I think we kind of indicate that the non-executives have heeded the call in terms of looking for good corporate governance. We've seen that in the fees to some extent, and overall, very positive.